The Old Town Road Theory, Black Cowboys, Juneteenth, and the suppression of information through the whitewashing of history. The recent success of Lil Nas X's Old Town Road and the simultaneous online emergence of what's become known as the Yeehaw agenda has created many conversations about how melanated people fit into Western or cowboy culture. Some have argued that this black Western aesthetic is somehow an appropriation of the traditional American cowboy, but after a thorough review of the subject, it becomes apparent that this is ridiculous, and it can be further argued that the cowboy as we know it could not even be without the melanated existence and influence. The support for this argument begins with the origins of the term cowboy. Cow has origins in the English Germanic root ku, referring to the mature female of cattle. The word boy has Middle English origins and refers to a male servant. Thus, in its most simplistic form, the term can be understood to refer to a male servant that attends to cattle. This term was first recorded in print in 1725, during the height of the transatlantic slave trade. Thus, we can furthermore make the conjecture that in at least some instances, this term referred to enslaved Africans who are responsible for tending to the cattle of their owners. This assertion is further supported by the mention of slave cowboys in studies of the South Carolina and Appalachian cattle industries, and the mention of cattle rustlers working under the direction of their masters. This responsibility to maintain cattle herds increased and expanded to also include land, as many Southern ranchers left their property to fight for the Confederacy in the Civil War. With this increase in responsibility on the part of the enslaved, they developed heightened skills in cattle tending, breaking wild horses, pulling calves out of the mud, and releasing longhorns caught in the brush. Even still, many ranchers returning home from the war defeated also found that their herds had been lost or out of control. The passing of the Emancipation Proclamation in January of 1863 further complicated the issue for slave-owning ranchers, as they would now be without the free labor that was crucial to their already attained success and their continued growth. This reason, along with others, are believed to be the motivation behind the denial of many defeated Confederate soldiers that the institution of American chattel slavery was over. Many of them withheld this information from the enslaved, denying also their freedom. It was not until 1865 that the last enslaved Africans were notified by Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, in Galveston, Texas, that they were now indeed free. This day, June 19th, lives in infamy to the institution of white superiority, better understood as white mediocrity or white fragility, but lives in the hearts of melanated people as Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, the real Independence Day, or Juneteenth. One account from Texas on the night of June 19, 1865, reports that thousands flooded the streets of Galveston, rejoicing in their newly announced freedom. The sweet smell of barbecue smoke filled the air. Dancing feet pounded the dirt roads, and harmonic voices sung spirituals. This was the day, Juneteenth, that will forever commemorate African American freedom. While it is debatable if the quest for true African freedom in America was attained on 6/19/1865, what the Emancipation Proclamation and the arrival of Major General Granger to Galveston represents to the black population at that time cannot be understated. Right after the Civil War, being a cowboy was one of the few jobs open to men of color who wanted to not serve as elevator operators, delivery boys, or other similar occupations. Historians believe that during this time, 1/4 of all cowboys were melanated. The job of cowboy consisted of breaking wild horses so that they could be domesticated to aid in the transferring of herds of cattle across the country. These travelers moved through areas occupied by the indigenous natives of the land and often had to fight or shoot their way through. Freed blacks skilled in herding cattle found themselves in even greater demand when ranchers began selling their livestock in northern states, where beef was nearly 10 times more valuable than it was in Texas. As a cowboy, you had to have a certain degree of independence. You could not have an overseer. They had to go on horseback, and they may be gone for days. While the cowboy profession did provide a source of income and a level of freedom not obtained by many black people at that time, black cowboys were still living the black experience in America. Many faced discriminations. The stories of many black cowboys have been erased, denied food at restaurants, some of their legacies whitewashed at hotels. The TV character, the Lone Ranger, for example, is considered by some historians to have been a black man by the name of Bass Reeves, not the chiseled white guy usually seen on the screen. One of the best documented black cowboy life stories was that of Nat Love, aka Deadwood Dick. He was a recently freed black man who used his experiences growing up on a ranch to establish a free life of adventure and lore. Housed on a Tennessee plantation, Love's enslaver was also slow to share the good news of the establishment of the Emancipation Proclamation with his kidnapped workforce. In his autobiography, Love reports that it was quite a while after this that we found out we were free, and good news, like bad news, sometimes travel fast. It was not long before all the slaves in the surrounding county were celebrating their freedom, and Massa Lincoln was a hero of us all. Love eventually did make more of his life. He left and eventually arrived to Dodge City, Kansas, which he described as a typical frontier city with a great many saloons, dance halls, and gambling houses, and very little of anything else. While there, he joined the Duval outfit, a group of cowboys that led cattle herds from Texas to markets all across the country. Love eventually did make more of his life. He left and eventually arrived to Dodge City, Kansas, which he described as a typical frontier city with a great many saloons, dance halls, and gambling houses, and very little of anything else. While there, he joined the Duval outfit, a group of cowboys that led cattle herds from Texas to markets all across the country. In 1872, he was offered a better position from an Arizona company. Love recounted timeless stories of warring with Indians, shootouts with outlaws, drinking with Billy the Kid, and steer roping exercises. Done more for sport's sake than anything else, and the love of showing off. A weakness of all cowboys, more or less, he stated. There are other historical accounts of cowboys from different ranches holding impromptu calf roping and horse riding contests at the end of long drives. These competitions served as the precursor by the early 1900s for what became known as the popularity of Juneteenth celebrations declined, mostly due to economic and cultural changes. But the Poor People's Campaign in 1967 sparked a new interest in Juneteenth, and in 1980 it became an official state holiday in Texas. Today, Juneteenth observations are continuing to increase as the history and importance of it has spread thanks to technology. Contemporary celebrations, as similar to the originals, include dancing, barbecue, and games. What has also become a mainstay of Juneteenth celebrations are the black rodeo shows, further establishing the connection between the black experience in America, the quest for freedom, and the Western frontier. These celebrations occur all across Texas in Longview, Athens, and Dallas, in Oklahoma, Illinois, Nevada, Iowa, Missouri, and Mississippi, among other states. The best known black rodeo establishment is probably the Bill Pickett Traveling Rodeo. It was named after one of the most well-known black cowboys, who went professional at the age of 13 and was a pioneer in the sport of bulldogging. Bill Pickett died at 61 from injuries suffered when kicked in the head by a horse. Celebrations such as the Bill Pickett Rodeo serve to carry on often forgotten traditions of black culture in the Southwest and are the last remaining remnants that aid us in the task of piecing together black history in America. Due to advances in technology and transportation, the profession of cowboy is pretty much non-existent. But black cowboy culture is still well alive across America. In 1989, the Broken Arrow Horseback Riding Club was founded in Chicago by a black cowboy named Murdoch. The club has led initiatives to have city rules changed to allow horseback riding in parks with bridle paths. The club also organized rodeos and events to promote the joys of horses and stables to youth and adults. One recent blow to the contemporary preservation of black cowboy culture was the removal of the Black Cowboy Federation from the city-run Cedar Park stable in Howard Beach, New York. For over 2 decades, the Federation has prided itself in educating youth on the story of the black American cowboy through youth programs, rodeos, and school visits. They also promoted skills associated with horsemanship. The Federation had leased the stables since 1994, but lost management of it due to a lack of financial support and accusations of animal neglect. It was outbid by a large corporation in 2016 and is no longer in control of the land. Today, the world of the black cowboy is less of a culture and more of an aesthetic that since the 1980s can be found all throughout popular culture. Aspects of the Old West, such as cattle ranching and country music, have yet to be fully embraced or permeated by black culture. Most recently, this aesthetic has penetrated popular culture through the success of the chart-topping single Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. Existing at an intersection of blues, country music, and trap. Similar to a typical cowboy tale, Lil Nas X suggests that the inspiration behind the song came from having to leave home and blaze his own trail. This reemergence of the black cowboy has challenged and served as an area of conflict to many who are more comfortable with the traditional whitewash interpretation of the Western frontier. Despite strong rotation on country music stations, Billboard declared that the song did not contain enough elements of country music to be included on this country chart. Additionally, after Wrangler jeans, a company strongly associated with the traditional American Western cowboy aesthetic, collaborated on a clothing collection with Lil Nas X, they received much negative backlash from their core demographic. Complaints included that Wranglers ought to be worn by cowboys and farmers, not rappers. Another stated that this is the dumbest thing I've seen all day. Why is it about diversity and equality? They're jeans. These efforts to minimize Lil Nas X and Old Town Road in actuality only legitimize his claim to the black cowboy aesthetic and Western cowboy culture, as he has been made to be an outlaw of the music industry and a rebel to the idea of the traditional American cowboy. I wonder if they gave the rapping Duke this much strife. The actions of Wrangler customers and the Billboard Music Association only continue the American tradition of the attempt to erase the contributions melanated people have made to this country and a denial of black culture. In the same way that enslavers denied the enslaved their freedom in Galveston, Texas, and history is casting shadow over the black cowboy. To combat this, we must stay aware of our history and our role in society. We must share knowledge of our greatness so that we are no longer denied the freedom that comes with knowledge of self.